Beseda, good morning. So we're up to Siman Reish Beis Halacha Yud Dalet. We'll finish off this Siman today, Hashem. And we're going to discuss some interesting questions. Do you make a bracha on chewing gum? Do you make a bracha on sugar and these sort of things? So these are the halachas Mishnah will cover this morning. Says the Mechaber in Yud Dalet, Egoiz Rach, a soft nut, Shemavashli Midvash, that you cook with honey, V'keirin Nus Muscada, whatever that is, Mevarich Olav Shahakal. You make a bracha Shahakal. Says the Ramah, V'chein Oisam Egoizim Shemavashli Midvash Ba'odim Yerukim. And so too, those nuts which you cook with honey when they're green, Mevarchim Shahakal, you make a Shahakal on them. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Samachtes, Egoiz Rach, Shaloi Nigmar Gidulei, it hasn't yet ripened, Uklipaso Adayin Eina Kosher, and the shell is still very soft. And you use it for some sort of potion, and you sweeten it up with honey. Nus muscada, egoiz muscat. This is not the same as that which we said previously, because the sham pri gomahu, there it was a completed fruit, and therefore it was a different halacha. On this egoiz, which is unripe, which is raw, and you coat it with honey and things like that, you make a shahakal. Even though you're enhancing the fruit by adding honey and it's nice to eat, since it's still not ripe and it's very soft, and you eat it with the shell, etc., it's got a status of shahakal. Because when the person the farmer sowed it, he didn't intend you to eat it in this very unripe stage with the shell, with the husk. The intention was that you eat it when it ripens properly. If you eat unripe almonds, again the bracha will be shahakal mitam zeh for the same reason. And here certainly, because without any sort of interaction of frying or doing something else, you can't eat it at all. Shemaru, because it's very bitter. And the only way to do it is by adding honey. And the whole idea is over here, the reason why this particular nut is a shahakal is because it hasn't ripened yet. You never intended to plant it, to eat it at this unripe stage. But pre-gemura, at a completed fruit, which you cannot eat it raw, unless you fry it or whatever, you make the correct bracha for it. Okay. And then the Ramah says, so too those egoizim which are green, etc. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ayin Beis, there's a typo here or whatever, they should, instead of v'chein, it should read v'hein, says the Mishnah Berurah. But that is really the kavanah of the mechaber. Okay, good. Tesvav al ha-sukkah mevarich shahakol. If you eat sugar straight, you make a shahakol. V'chein ha-moitzeitz konim mesukos shahakol. And so too, if you suck sugarcane, sweet sugarcane, you make a shahakol. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sukkah, Pirush, because in those countries they grow sugarcane, and they squeeze them, and they cook the liquids until it congeals and it becomes harder, and it looks like salt. Right? He's trying to describe the sort of the sugar process. So you've got a sugar cube or clumps of sugar, and it looks like salt. That is describing it. Shahakol. You make a bracha of shahakal. It's no different to liquid, the dvash that comes out of tamarim of dates, which is considered like a liquid that emerges from them, a liquid ba'alma, or berchoso shahakal, and the bracha shahakal, v'chol shkein bezeh, and certainly over here, shenishtanu alidei habishul, that is changed through the bishul, and therefore it would not have the bracha of the sugar cane, whatever that is, ho'etz ha'adama, but rather it would actually take on the bracha of shahakol. V'chein ha'moitzetz, pirush, shemoitzetz koni ha'sukkah ba'atzma, you're actually sucking the sugar cane, you make a bracha of shahakol, gam kein mitan anal, the ha'kona ba'atzma who eats ba'alma, because the actual sugar cane, the cane itself is just wood. Ve'ef shalachol, you can't eat it. Elashiyesh b'masikus, it's just that it has a certain sweetness. Ve'imkein lo yodif hamoitzis amasikus me'oitz. There's no difference whether you eat the sweetness of the actual wood or you suck out the moisture from it. So too, if you suck something which is called licorice, which we are familiar with, even though it comes from a tree and it might think maybe or something, nevertheless it only has the status of shahakol. The gam who eats ba'alma, because that is also it's a tree. It's just that it has a sweet taste. V'da, the after Shulchan Aruch stam ledina da al hasuka v'ala konim birchos shahakol. Even though the Shulchan Aruch says very clearly that the bracha you make is shahakol, but emes yesh b'zedeyas ben arishonim. It's not so straightforward because other rishonim have different opinions. K'meshemuva b'tur beis Yosef. They're not sure. The b'zeh yotze b'diavad l'kulalma. And b'diavad, if you made a shahakol, then everyone agrees it's okay. For ulam b'diavad in berech ber pro'etz or ber adama yotza. But if by mistake you made a ber pro'etz or a ber adama on sugar, then you would be yotza on those canes. V'chein b'tzuka shelanu shenase me burekas, which is called sugar beet. I'll tell you about that in a second. Gam ken yesh levarech lechatchila shahakol. Also, you make shahakol over the evid in berech ber adama yotza k'mesh be'arti hakol ber alocha ein sham. So I looked into this a little bit. Just what is the difference? I wasn't familiar with this, but there are two ways to make sugar. The most common way is through sugar cane, which are those long sticks. You've probably seen them. That is how most of the sugar in the world is made. However, you can make sugar through something called sugar beets, like a beetroot. It's not like a purple fruit, but it's like a sort of a beige, dull sort of color, and that's called sugar beets. And 20% of the sugar in the world are made through sugar beets, mostly from colder countries, Russia, Northern Europe, places like that. And the Mishnah Berurah, so that's why the Mishnah Berurah, of Eastern Europe, he says that's what he means, that in our countries where you make v'chein b'tzuka shelon shenasa meburekas, made from this sugar beet, also the bracha is shahakol. But either way, we make a bracha of shahakol. Now, what's interesting is he's talking about sucking licorice, and even though it comes from the tree and it looks like tree and plants, etc., nevertheless you make a bracha of shahakol because it's the zeh ba'alma that's coming from it. So if you look at 79, this comes to what I mentioned earlier. What is the bracha for chewing gum? Do you make a bracha on chewing gum? So in 79 he says, haloyes gumei le'iso, mastic, right? You chew gum, hayre hagoner bel yashav, shekiven shemargishim mesikus, since you taste the flavor at a certain sweetness, al kol ponim betchilas halisa, certainly at the beginning of the chewing until the flavor sort of runs out, yesh levarich olav, and therefore you should make a shahakol on chewing gum. V'chein kosu b'shar shuv zar d'tzion, mevarich shahakol shekim shu moitzes ashuka harukamoitzes konim mesukim, because you're sucking out the flavor, whatever it is, mint, sweet flavor, etc.
You have a problem if you're eating inside, if you're having chewing inside going out.
Yeah, right. So because of shinamakum, yeah, but there is always there. Well, because one of the heterim is that if you're constantly eating, if you're ongoing and you're sipping your tea as you go from or eating the apple as you're going along, I'm not suggesting it's the most polite thing to do. Stum chewing gum and stum eating as you're walking, but if you're you could argue there's no shinamakum there because it's an ongoing eating process. But either way. Chewing gum requires a bracha. Of course, it's a bracha rishona. There's no bracha achrona because it's tiny. There's no bracha achrona. You haven't eaten a revius of liquid or food or whatever it is. Okay, let's go back. Let's finish off the simon. Tes zayin al pilpel on pepper v'zangvil, which is ginger, yeveshim, which is dry, val haklov shel giropli rotzalema neglech, which there is he says at the bottom siperim, which is cloves. All these sort of spices, you don't eat them straight, you add them into other foods. So if a person, for whatever reason, maybe you were a naughty boy and you had to have some pepper in your mouth because you said something you shouldn't have said, or whatever it is, you don't make a bracha on spices when eaten straight. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'zangvil, humashakorin ingba, which I think is ginger, v'chol kiyetzi glan v'stuva, what is that for? Sugim shel basomim. Okay, types of spices. She'ein derech pirush. You don't normally eat it, and you use it as a spice to add into various foods. You don't eat it straight. But this person ate it directly on its own. You don't make a bracha on it at all. There's no hana of eating it straight when they're dry. If you added sugar to it and you have a spoon of, I don't know, of ginger with some sugar or something, pepper with sugar, I don't know what, then it sweetens it, then it becomes something which is edible, and then you make a shahakal on it. Okay, Yud Zayin. Al egois muscat, bore prioids. You make a bore prioids on this egois muscat, va'al kanila, rotzalem at simerind, which he says 3 is cinnamon, is cinnamon. On that, you make a bore prihadoma, because that is already got a taste, and that is edible. Bore prioids. So on this egois muscat, you make a berberetz. Now what is that? It's a prihu, it's a regular nut, or regilin gamkein lo'achlu b'yovesh, and you can eat it when it's dry. Or mishi yesh lo shilshul, if a person has diarrhea, v'noisen l'toich ha'sheichar, and he puts it in to a beer or something, muscat kadesh yad, so that will stop his diarrhea. Im eina tzomei ve'eina sheise el refuah. I'm only eating or drinking this thing for medical purposes. Ha-muscat ikka v'ha'sheicha tofel, and therefore mavarich ber pruates, because that's my ikka. That's the rule we're going to come across. Ikka v'tofel, ikka odif. You go boss of the ikka, I mean. And therefore, if the ikka is the muscat to eat it for medical purposes, to stop the diarrhea, then you would make a beri prihoetz. Kamei gabi shemen el b'siftada, like we had previously. V'imhu toiv lishtos ha'sheichar gam b'lei refuah. But if you really wanted this sheichar, this beer or this drink, whatever it is, afal pishanis l'soicha muscat refuah, and you add a bit of muscat for medical purposes, ha'sheichar ikka, and mavarich shahakol, or poite es ha-muscat. So it depends what your primary focus is. Is it for the beer or is it for the muscat? And that's true with what we said about olive oil previously. When he wanted to have that, remember we spoke about some sort of liquid concoction of olive oil and beer and things like that, and he wanted to drink this mea nigron with olive oil and sheichar, even though the reason why I put the shemen in was for medical purposes, again over there, that was your primary focus, that was the ikka, and therefore you would make a shahakal. Okay, and then we said, the Mechaber said, if you eat, the Ramah added, you add this tzimerind, which he says is cinnamon, you make a ber adama, ki hu god la haaretz, it's like a bush, or regilin gamkein la'achla b'yovish, and you can have cinnamon dry, and therefore on that you would make a ber pri hadama. Okay, last sif, al pilpil v'zangvil, on pepper and ginger, kashem retuvim. So we said above, if they're moist, you don't eat spices straight, and therefore you don't make a bracha. But if they're moist, then they are edible. People do eat them, and on that you make a ber pri adama. Kol ha-peiros sheyedeh bohem shem ikka ha-pri mevorach aleim ber praetz v'she'ein ikka ha-pri ber pri adama. Okay, we'll talk about the classification of Hashem another time. V'im hu mesupuk boy im ikka ha-pri oiloi, if it's the ikka pri, if it's the actual fruit, or is it just like the tree of the fruit, then if you're not sure, then you make a ber pri adama, because that will definitely cover even if it's the fruit. V'im en yodeh ma'u, and if you just don't know, then mevorach shahakol, which we'll see exactly what that means. Says the Mishnah Berurah, pei beis retuvim. If this pepper or the ginger is moist, says the Mishnah Berurah in pei beis, the zingvul lav peirahu, because ginger is not a fruit. Ela sheroshim min ha'etz tachas hakarka, the roots are underneath the ground. Or palpulin and pepper afal gav the gdein alilon, even though they grow on a tree. Given the ein noitin ela al das sheis yapshu, you only plant them in order to sort of use them when they're dry. They ochlu ruben shechukin bataruvas p'ktavlin, they're crushed very finely. And you don't really eat them directly, only very occasionally. But since sometimes you eat them when they're moist, that was sort of some planted for that intention. V'she'enon ikka pri kanal b'sivov v'ayin lekam b'reish siman reish vav Mishnah Berurah. Okay, v'imu mesupuk, and if you're not sure, you make shahaka. What does that mean? Very important. Hainu acha she'lomad ve'en yochel levara. Not that you just can't be bothered to find out, but you've learned, you know the sugya, and it's a sofik. Avol mi she'lo lomad, but if you didn't inquire, you didn't try to find out. Lo yochel at she'elech etzel chacham lam de brachas. You got to find a Chacham and find out what the bracha is, or Shaila text, or Google, or whatever. Ask your local Rav and find out what the answer is. Boire priadoma, she'afimu pri'ates yotza b'diavad brichas priadoma, like we've always said. Kedekam b'simin reish vav. Mashahu hanu shemahu min shebrichasa shehakal, because maybe the actual bracha is shehakal. Okay, say that. What do you